Good afternoon, good morning. I'm Neil McDonald. I'm the president of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce, and welcome to my daily LinkedIn Live, where I discuss process and procedures for you to achieve success in the federal market. I spent 20 years as a small business owner in the federal market, and since 2018, I've been teaching people like you that government contracting is not a secret, it's just a process. The process goes from A to Z, and when we follow the process, we achieve the results or the success that we want to get out of it. Today, I'm going to talk about federal sales and how it's a numbers game, right? And if you learn the game and you learn how to play the game, then you can not only have fun, but you can succeed. And so I want to talk about three different main things today. The five types of people you'll meet is the first thing I want to talk about. Second is understanding who to call at an agency, a large business, or a small business. There's different types of people within that you can talk to. And then the last thing I want to leave you with is ways to think about measuring your progress, not just long-term, monthly and annually, et cetera, but really daily. Because if you measure yourself daily, and not trying to overburden us salespeople, but if we measure ourselves daily in our progress, we'll achieve the results we want in the time frame that we want. And so I'm going to talk to you about that and give you some suggestions on how you can measure your own activities starting today or tomorrow. And it doesn't have to be this quick flip, light switch. It's more like a dimmer as you continue to learn a new skill. Don't ever think that it has to be a light switch on or off. It can be a dimmer, or what they talk about, various shades of gray, evolve into getting really good at it. And today I'm going to get you started on that path. So I've shown this in past trainings. And so if you've been at other trainings I've done, you've seen me talk about the bell curve, but it's really important. It's vitally important to understand what this really means. I describe in sales that as you're going to knock on somebody's door, whether it's a consumer's door or a partner's door or a buyer's door, you're going to have the same results. Some people will open the door and buy from you. Some people won't. And my phrase in there is some will, some won't, so what? And the so what part is don't get caught up on the ones who aren't going to buy from you. You have got to run into people who are not going to buy from you in order to find the people who are going to buy from you. So, it's just a normal part. We have night and we have day. And in sales, we have some will and some won't, right? And so don't dwell on the nighttime. One other analogy that I really like to use when I'm describing going after the ideal customer or the ideal teaming partner, to us, they're a gold nugget, right? When we find them and they want to work with us or buy from us, that's gold. That's the gold we're digging for when we're doing gold mining, let's say. Well, in order to get to the gold, you don't dig gold. What you do is dig dirt and remove all the dirt. What you're left with is the gold. And in sales, it's a similar type of thing, right? You have to get, the dirt is the nose, right? It's not a bad thing. It's just dirt's great because I can use it to do farming, right? And gold's great. But in this case, I'm going after the gold. So I'm getting rid of the dirt. I'm getting rid of the nose. And what I will find are the yeses. And that's something to keep in mind. In the bell curve, there's 5 stages. And I want to just describe them again for you because I broke them down a little differently than I've done before, in the sense that when you look at the bell curve, there's innovators. These are the people, when you say, I want to sell you something, they're like, oh my gosh, where have you been? I've been looking for exactly what you sell. And you're trying to figure out whether you're awake or not, or whether you're dreaming how a sale will go. Innovators just jump at you the minute you show up, and they believe what you believe. They want what you sell, right? And so as you look at the bell curve here, innovators represent 2.5% of the market. So 2.5% of the doors you knock on, you can think about are innovators. Early adopters are the people who say, hey, that all sounds great. I want to get it. They might sit there and say, let me just figure out how I can make the money work or something. Or, you know what, I'm tied up on a couple of proposals right now, but I really do want to talk to you about maybe working future opportunities together. Let me wrap this up and I'll come back. Well, those are early adopters. They've got a little bit of excuses, no real hesitation, but excuses that hold them from jumping at it right away. But they're buyers, right? They absolutely like you and like what you're bringing. They agree with it. They're just not ready just this second. They don't need any convincing. They just need a little time to get started. So innovators and then early adopters represent the first 16% of your market or the doors you knock on. The next group is early majority. And so you can see right here, some will, that wraps up the some will bullet of early majority. It's 34% of the audience that's out there. And early majority are the ones in federal sales, as an example. They would want you to have past performance and experience in the federal market. The early adopters and innovators will take chances on you to be part of their team, maybe even giving you a prime if you haven't had a prime before. But the early majority, the bulk, will want you to have past performance. Thing, it's just saying, hey, I want to see that you've done it before, and then I will buy from you, right? I absolutely want to buy from you, but I need to know that you've got experience with our agency or experience doing it, at least in the federal market. The some won't, I'm not going to go too far into that because they really don't matter, right? There's nothing wrong with them. They're just no's. And so the faster you realize that late majority and laggards in the bell curve are the some people who won't, the some agencies that won't work with you, the some companies that won't team with you. Totally fine, right? When you realize that there's a normal set of numbers in here, then you can accept 50% of the people that you talk to will not want to work with you. You'll have a meeting and they won't want to meet you again. Sometimes we take the laggards and the late majority people, that 50% that won't, we take it personally. Even I sometimes have to still remind myself that one no, it's like, oh, I got to know. It's like the worst thing. It's like, it's not the worst thing. It is just they're not our buyer. Our buyer's over here. And the faster you can recognize and accept late majorities and laggards, the some won't, people who won't work with you, companies that won't team with you, the faster you realize that, the faster you can let them get back to what they're doing, and you can shift your energy to the ones who do want to work with you, the majority, right? Or the early majority and the early adopters and the innovators. So that's an important way to look at it. Another way we can look at this group is Stephen Covey, who wrote 7 Habits for Highly Effective People, talks about circle of influence and circle of concern. Circle of influence is all those things that I have the ability to do something about. I can influence what's going on with that. And circle of concern are all the things I wish I could do something about or I have concern about, but I cannot move the needle at all on those. An example, just a personal example in the household is I want my sons and me to be kind and courteous. Well, that can fit in the circle of influence. I can influence it by talking to them about being kind and courteous. I can live as an example of being a kind and courteous person. So I look to them and I work with them to say please and thank you and you're welcome, right? But when I think to myself, I want the world to be kind and courteous, that's a circle of concern. There's no way I'm going to be able to influence the world. I can think to myself, if the 3 of us do it, we're like a butterfly and it'll change the whole world, but it will not, right? That's just wishful thinking. And so I can't change everybody out there, but maybe my circle of influence can expand to say, you know what? I want my company, the people in my company to live a philosophy of or a culture of kindness and courteousness, not just to our customers, but to each other, to the Starbucks person that we get our coffee from, whatever. So in our company, we say, hey, that's who it is. My friends, they could be in my circle of influence because really, if they turn out to be jerks, why am I friends with them? But I can influence it. So my circle of influence can expand, but at some point it is constrained by what I can do. And so as it relates to the bell curve, some will, some won't. The circle of influence, the businesses that you can team with and get on their opportunities as a partner, or the agencies that you can work with and serve their needs as a vendor, those are in your circle of influence. Those are the some wills. So the innovators, early adopters, early majority fit in your circle of influence. Those are the ones you should put your energy on. That's the whole point of a circle of influence is point your energy at the circle of influence and you'll be able to get done what you want. The circle of concern I'd love to work with late majorities and laggards, but the reality is I can't influence them. They're not going to buy from me. Laggards absolutely won't buy from me. And late majority won't buy from me unless they have to. They love the incumbent. They'd rather just stick with status quo because they like how things are going. Whatever it is, they'll come up with all sorts of excuses why I won't work with them. It's not a bad thing. It just is. And so they're in my circle of concern. And the minute I put them in my circle of concern, I say, I'm not working on those, right? The more time I spend in my circle of concern, the less things I'm doing that are positively moving the needle forward. In sales, we want to move capture and BD forward, right? And so we should focus on the circle of influence where some will, the people who want to work with us. Okay, one last thing I think I have on this slide is I wanted to take this bell curve and apply it to real example numbers here. And so if I've got a company I want to help, and they do SharePoint, right? And I'm determined to help them really succeed in the goals that they have in SharePoint. So one of the steps, one of the plans I have for them is I want to help them find 20 strategic partners. These are strategic partners that will be prime partners, meaning they will do the prime contract, or they will be the prime on opportunities, and my customer will be the subcontractor. And so I want to find 20 innovators and early adopters. I don't care about the early majority at the moment because that's too much work. If I can find the early adopters or innovators, they're basically going to love this company for showing up. Oh my God, it's so great you're here. That was the 1 week area we had on our whole requirements gap analysis, right? Is what you do. Perfect. Thanks for showing up. And so when I look at a goal of 20 prime partners, what I'm really telling myself is if I can get get on 2 to 4 opportunities for each one of these over a 12-month period, then I can have 40 to 80 proposals going out the door that I'm part of. Now, here's something to pause on for 1 second, a little sidebar. When I talk about 40 or even 80 proposals going out the door, I know for a lot of you, it might sound like a lot, but it is manageable if you focus on your core competency. I was using an example of golf this morning with somebody, and I think I'm going to try to use it here. If I say that I'm good at golf, right, that's my core competency, equate that to like cyber or construction, but I'm going to use golf. If I say I'm good at golf, what I'm suggesting to my customer is don't just say you're good at golf, say you're good at getting the ball out of the sand trap. So in golf, sometimes the ball goes into a trap and the trap's filled with sand and you need to get over there. And it's a really pretty unique talent to get it out of the trap compared to putting or teeing off. And so I want to go in there to these prime partners and say, hey, I can get the ball out of the trap every single time. In SharePoint, that's one piece of Office 365, right? And so I would be going in saying SharePoint, even though I know I can do a much bigger set of tasks. When I do that, and when I say I'm participating in 80 proposals in a year, well, I'm only writing to SharePoint. I'm not writing to all these other areas, right? And so in the sand trap example, I'm writing to the sand trap. And the point is, at some I paused because I said the point is at some point, but anyways, at some point you're going to have enough written material that you've already done for opportunities that you reuse it. I could write a 5-page, a 10-page document in a single day. I could write a 100-page document to a prime in a week because I would use, in my last company, I was a SharePoint company as well, I would use a lot of the stuff that was already in place. I knew that there was a way I would talk about migration. There was a way I would talk about software development or this thing or that thing. And the only thing I'd have to do is 10 or 20% customer focused, but the 80% of it was already written. I often hear people talk about how RFIs are hard to write. I'm like, how on earth are they hard to write if you're writing to your subject matter expertise, right? To your core competency. If they're hard to write, I would submit you're not writing to core competencies, you're writing to competencies. A lot of different things you could do, not what are you the best at. Anyways, enough of the sidebar. That's my vision for having 20 innovators or early adopters right here, right? In order to get those going with the bell curve, I need to meet with at least 125 qualified companies. And when I say qualified, I mean, if I'm doing SharePoint and I'm reaching out to them, I know somehow or another I can fit into their world. I know that these companies are doing, let's say, $5 or $10 million or more, right? All the way up into the largest. So they need to be big enough that they need somebody else on their team at a significant level. When you look at the bell curve, right, 16 innovators and early adopters out of every 100 companies that I reach out to are there. So I need to reach out to 125 companies to get the 20 number. That sounds like a lot, but when I'm focusing my effort, and you'll see in a minute when I'm measuring my effort, then I'm able to achieve that goal. And if I can have 20 strategic partners that would value me for SharePoint on their teams, now I've got 20 sales people out there basically There's companies out there looking to us going, I don't need you to be a great sales company. I need you to be the very best SharePoint company. So you help us win in your writing and you help us deliver in the SharePoint skills that you say you got. So I hope that makes sense. This idea, one thing to remember, I think I really want to drive this home. Some will, some won't. So what? Okay, let's talk about, I have 2 other slides I want to go through, and I can see my time's going through pretty fast. This one here, I just wanted to focus on the 3 types of people you would run into. So I describe types from whether they're an innovator or a laggard or in between, right, on the bell curve. Now I want you to think about people you'll be reaching out to in another way. So this is in sales. There's 3 types of people that are points of entry into a company, whether it's an agency or whether it's a large or small business. The first one is focus of receptivity. A focus of receptivity is somebody who's going to be a champion, share information with you, right? They're willing to listen, they're prepared to listen and to help you navigate within the organization, whether it's going upstream to a contracting officer or over to the left to a program office, whatever it is. The key trait of a focus of receptivity is that they're willing to answer your questions and willing to make introductions within their organization. That's the biggest thing. 3 examples that you can see here are federal agency. One of the best known focuses of receptivity are small business specialists, right? Remember the bell curve. Not all of them are helpful. There are some laggard small business specialists, but the bulk of them are helpful, and 50% of them are very helpful, right? So even with them, you still have to find the bell curve numbers. But small business specialists are a great example of a focused receptivity. At a large, the equivalent of the small business specialist is the SBLO. The small business liaison officer's job is to find qualified small businesses that can support their internal customers. So they want to meet you if you can bring something that helps them at the large business. And at a small business, pretty much anybody you meet generally is a focus of receptivity. They're still very focused on the culture of the company, and we like they just remember what it was like to be small. So if you're reaching out to a small business, I describe almost everybody in there as, of course, you got the bell curve, but every role in there could be a focus of receptivity. One warning about focuses of receptivity is they're super friendly and nice and will meet with you. Do not stay there. They don't buy anything. The focuses of dissatisfaction, which is the next group, influence heavily what gets bought, and the focuses of power actually buy. These guys are really, really nice, but they don't buy. So you want to get past them. Focuses of dissatisfaction are the next ones. These are the ones who have the problem, whether it's a perceived problem of challenges or a lack of a problem of, hey, this is what we want to achieve, these goals, but they don't know how to get there. So here I wrote they're unhappy with current systems or the incumbents, right? So you want to reach the program office in an agency. Those are clear focuses of dissatisfaction. They're primarily the only ones. You've got large businesses. In large businesses, I say the focuses of dissatisfaction are capture and proposal leads. And the reason I say this is because they're the ones trying to build a team that will win. They might have small business plan that they have to put in place, but before they get to that, they're looking for companies that can make sure they've got the winningest proposal going out the door. And if you can contribute to that, these people tend to be the ones who are heavily in that mix, right? They're forming the team, the capture manager and the proposal manager. And in a small business, it generally is the capture lead. Yes, you might interact with the proposal manager or technical writers, et cetera, but they tend to be a little less engaged earlier on in the capture lifecycle. And the capture lead or the capture manager is the one that's taking that role. In small businesses, you find people taking on multiple roles, wearing multiple hats. So the last one is focuses of power. When you think about the points of entry, when you're going in and you're trying to set up meetings, focuses of power are the ones who've got the money. They're the ones who make the decision about whether to purchase or not from you. So in a federal agency, right, the contracting officer has the power. They're warranted to buy from industry. They're the only ones who can buy something. Contracting specialists or contract specialists, to me, are pretty much at that same level, because once you start coming up in dollar volume, some of these contracts have 4, 5, 6 people, and several of them might be contract specialists. They are highly influential and relied upon to help make decisions with that contracting officer. The officer is the one making the final sign off, but those contracting specialists are very important to the process for the government. And so they're very, very important to us. Large businesses, I wanted to give you two examples. One is contract vehicle program managers. So if I was going in to a large prime, trying to get in there and do business, knock on doors, whatever, and I'm looking for focuses of power to have meetings with, somebody like Booz Allen, who's on Seaport Next Gen or Oasis or one of these large contract vehicles, I might look to find out who the program manager is running that vehicle, because basically their job is to maximize the amount of money coming in on that vehicle. And they're working with program managers, et cetera, who are using that on their own team. They're they're almost like a focus of receptivity within vehicles, but they're also a focus of power, because they can make a decision to add you as at the very least, an unnamed teaming partner, meaning they'll let you know about task orders and see if you fit in there. But they're a great focus of power. And then from another angle is senior leadership. Often the final decision in a large prime is, or a large business, is you have leadership. And so beginning to understand who that leadership is. And it could be somebody as straightforward as just knowing who the VP of Air Force business development is, who's got the overall responsibility, and beginning to have a relationship with them. Maybe it's not a regular relationship, but getting them to know you is important. And so they're a focus of power, because they can decide whether you're going to be on the team or not. If a capture lead wants to recommend you come up, they're going to go, I don't know, Neil's only done 2 contracts or something, or whatever it is. So they're a focus of power. And then at the small business level, the focus of power is the owner. There might be really delegated senior leadership, but one of the beauties of a small business is you can reach the owner and find decision makers right there, focus of power, where they say, oh yeah, I remember what it was like to be small. Come on, we'll help you get started. Or they'll be able to look at you and instantly know where you would fit into their team's sales pipeline and the activities that's going on in there. So I'm going to pause for a second, let this sink in. And we'll hit this last slide. So I want to show this because I was going to walk it through, but I know I only got a few minutes time. So if you read ahead, I want to let you read ahead. But one of the things that's really important for us to succeed is we measure our activities. What I want you to think about measuring from a salesperson's perspective, that could be a business developer or a capture lead. If you've got another title, it really doesn't matter what the title is. It matters what your tasks are. If you're responsible for sales, then I recommend you put in place some basic measurements on yourself. I'm not recommending management put it in, right? That's a whole different animal. You have got to be willing to do it yourself to say, I'm going to measure it. So some things that you can measure is initial calls to get a meeting. This is where you're trying to just really, truly do a cold calls. And later in this week, I'll talk to you about how to warm up a cold call. Interesting thing. But if all you're doing is picking up the phone and dialing, right, that's one thing you can measure. And by the way, at the end of each one of those first bullets, you see me give them points. I'll talk about that in a second. The second thing is if you get an introduction meeting scheduled, give yourself 3 points. That's awesome. We're trying to get to 125 companies that we have meetings with. So if you get it scheduled, we're giving ourselves 3 points. If I get an introduction meeting, I have an introduction meeting today, I'm giving myself 5 points. It's awesome. Okay. That's what we're looking for, is to have meetings with people. And then the next one is program office. If we have a follow-up meeting, not an introduction meeting, but a follow-up meeting with a program office, I'm going to give myself 2.5 points. That program office one to me is related to deep dive business development or additional capture activity that we're doing. So I'm excited about that one. And then the last one on the first set of what to measure is follow-up meetings with strategic stakeholders. So this could be if you're teamed up with Booz Allen and you have a meeting every 2 or 3 weeks. Every time you have that, give yourself 2 points. And in this case, I said max 1 per 2 weeks. What I mean is you can't meet with Booz Allen 3 times in a 2-week period and give yourself points each time. Once you have a strategic partner, you want to be going a little bit of a distance so that you can talk to other strategic partners as well. So you get points for meeting with them, but only once every 2 weeks do you get the points. Another example is small business specialists. I would stay in touch with them on a regular basis. Just even once a month, maybe even outreach. Well, when you do, you can give yourself points for that because they're a strategic stakeholder. So you see this idea of what to measure. And one of the things that they're leaning into is that next bullet is these are the right things that you should be doing. And if you do them the right way and enough of the right things, you will achieve the success you want. So what is enough? I'm recommending that you give yourself a 10-point per day goal. Every day you want to get 10 points. And so an example is if I have 2 introduction meetings today, I meet with 2 different companies, 2 different times, could be 30-minute meetings. I get 5 points for it, right? I mean, 5 points each. So that's 10 points. I just hit my thing. I don't go home. I keep working, right? But I've hit my goal. It's salespeople. We like to get our points out of the way by 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, right? Because then it means you're doing the most important things first thing in the day, and then you let the day happen to you. So another example is I might, it's 0.25 points. And so I have to do 40 calls today. If I do nothing else, no other meetings, no other scheduling, I have to do 40 calls today. That's not a big deal if really that's my whole goal is to try to get to meetings. You know, you'll begin to see that the calls lead to meetings scheduled, lead to meetings held, et cetera. So what you want to do is the more valuable the task is, the more points you get for it. And so you want 10 a day. You don't roll things over. So if you got 15 points today, you don't bring 5 forward. But every single day you're aiming for 10, and every week you're aiming for 50. So if you're getting to Friday and you're at 40, I mean, you're at 30, then you need 20 points on Friday, right? You want to hold yourself accountable. I used to sit there and push pretty heavily on getting points early on, so I didn't have to worry about it. The last thing is quarterly and annual targets. If you found value in today's topic, found it interesting, give it a thumbs up or a little insightful icon there, and I'd appreciate it. Remember, government contracting, it's not a secret. It's just a process. Part of the process we talked today is about measuring our daily activity. I'll see you in the next video.